Hey, this is Rick Casalge from exercisesforinjuries.com. Today I wanted to welcome you to this interview, and this interview is with Tim, and I'll get Tim to introduce himself.
Hey Rick, how's it going, man? So my name's Tim Ross. I'm actually from New Zealand, and I own a private personal training studio, and I also have a online strength and conditioning blog, which is sort of for the skinnier guys that are looking to bulk up, add some muscle, and add some strength.
Awesome. So Tim, we were chatting a couple weeks ago in San Diego, and we got talking about bench pressing. So I thought having doing an interview with you would be beneficial to everyone at exercisesforinjuries.com. So we're going to kind of chat about bench pressing because I know that's something that you really focus in on and that you focus in on your blog and with your clients. So maybe we'll start off with why the bench press? Why do you focus in on the bench press?
Well, the main reason really is because it's just such an effective exercise for your upper body. It's a compound movement, so you end up using multiple muscle groups. It's quite time efficient. You can use quite a lot of weight on it, so it's really good for progressive overload and just generally building muscle and upper body strength.
Awesome. And then, so we probably, looking at bench pressing, we all probably either think of like the flat bench with dumbbells or the flat bench with a barbell. I mean, and probably the third one ends up being machines. So looking at bench pressing machines, do you prefer them over one of those other options of dumbbells or barbells, or do they all kind of have their own role?
Well, they definitely do each have a specific purpose. Like obviously, when you use dumbbells, you have to use a few more stabilizers. Barbells allow you to use a bit more weight. And machines, while they are useful, I wouldn't say especially if you're a younger guy, it shouldn't be the staple because it locks you into a certain range of motion, which means your stabilizer muscles won't be able to fire as much. You're just going to be getting less activity going on there. And as well, the other thing is some machines might not be well set up for you. So you might just find, just with your joint angles, the way you're built, it might just be not quite the most comfortable way to bench press.
Okay. And so a lot of guys, what they want to do is focus in on their chest area. Now, is the bench press the best exercise that they should focus in on?
I'd say it's definitely one of the best, yes. Maybe not the best, things like heavy dips can work quite well as well, but because it's a compound movement, so compound movements have been shown to build more muscle than the isolation ones. And so obviously you can do that, and you can also add a lot of weight to it, which allows you to, really overload those muscles.
Awesome. And looking at the bench press, it looks like such a simple movement. A lot of people will just kind of, jump into, see someone do it and just go into doing it as well. What's a common mistake that people make when doing the bench press?
Probably like the most common one that I see is to do with the people's shoulders. So they'll actually end up using their shoulders a lot more than they should be. And you see when they press, they'll actually protract their shoulders right forward like that. And because the chest is a bigger muscle, I mean, that's what you want to be using. And when people use the shoulders too much, they end up getting shoulder pain. It's just not an effective way to do the exercise. So it's really keeping the shoulders retracted back while you press.
Okay, awesome. Now, one thing that you talk about, on your blog and in your product was setup, the bench press setup. So, what would be, what are some poor bench press setups that people should avoid and some fixes to them as well?
Probably like two of the most common things I think would be, if you're in a power rack or a squat rack, having the pins set too high. So when going back to the protraction before, when you take the bar out of the rack, the people actually have to lift it over the pins by pushing their shoulders forward, which sort of ruins your nice, good setup position. So it's getting the pins to the right height would definitely be one thing. And the other would be when you actually set up on the bench itself, that you're actually lying in the right position. Because oftentimes people will be, either too far away from the bar, which means they can't effectively pull it out, kind of like what we were talking before. And sometimes people will be even too close, which means they just can't get the bar clear of the rack properly as well. So it's the best tip I've got there is when you set up on the bench, if you have the bar sort of between your eye and mouth level, so it's somewhere in between here, and that's going to allow you to pull it out effectively without losing your position.
Okay. Now, looking at someone that's starting out bench pressing, how would they gauge what weight they should begin with?
Well, if you've never actually bench pressed before, it's pretty hard to tell exactly where to start. So the best way to do it would be to use the empty bar, try a few reps, see how that feels, and then depending on how well trained you are, if you're more of a beginner, I'd say you want to bump it up by say 10 pounds per set until you can get within say an 8 to 12 rep range, and you're feeling fairly challenged towards the end. And potentially, if you're a bit more advanced, you could go maybe 20 pounds increase per set, and just sort of keep going until you feel challenged.
Okay. And looking at the bench press, it's kind of an awkward movement when you have this weight over your chest, and if you might depending on what part of the movement you're in, it's over your head. What are some ways of having the exercise safe without a spotter?
Well, probably the main thing when it comes to when you're bench pressing without a spotter is just to not be too ego about it and make sure you're using a weight that you actually can handle. So I wouldn't be training to failure when you're doing bench press without a spotter, obviously, right? But with that said as well, with some squat racks, with some bench press machines, what you can do is you have pins, which you can just sort of place beside your chest. So if you do miss your rep, if you can't quite get it off your chest, you can sort of drop your chest a little bit, let the bar rest on the pins, and then you can get out if you're training to failure.